Hi there, this is the full code. What I wanted to do in a very quick video is respond to a graphic that's been doing the rounds recently. It's been picked up by just about everyone, and it's a graphic which I think has some value, but maybe not as much value as some people are suggesting. And also I think that people, as with any statistics or any graphic or anything to do with Tottenham Hotspur, a lot of people are using it for their own purposes. So I just want to have a look at it in a bit more detail, and that's the graphic of Tottenham Hotspur's form over the kind of 30 or so games following our first 10 games of last season. You might have seen it all over social media with lots of kind of pinky red on it, highlighting defeats that Tottenham have had, green bars for wins, and then amber or yellow bars for draws that we've had, and it doesn't make great reading. So there's a couple of things really to look at it. I think number one, if you were to take it as a whole, one of the things that I would always say from a perspective of a coach is that you need a fairly big sample in order to draw some assumptions. So you're really looking for patterns, you're really looking for a way of looking at things in a general manner that gives you an idea of what's going on, and you've got a decent sample size in terms of the number of games that are on that graphic and are on that list, and it is indicative of Tottenham Hotspur's form, and at top level you get what you deserve. So Tottenham Hotspur got what they deserved in many of those games in terms of the performances that were being put out. So lots of the red bars were merited, not all of them. But by the same token, I think it can also be deceptive. So what I would say to anybody who's using that graphic to illustrate a point about how terrible things are, we're not going in the right direction, or you don't believe in Ange Postecoglou, that all of those things may be completely valid. Certainly from a subjective point of view, you're welcome to your opinion on whether things are going in the right direction. But what I would say is there's a couple of mitigations. So the first big one is this is a graphic that's based on 30 games, I believe it is, or around that, out of a 41 game season, about as short a season as you can get from Tottenham. And from that perspective, there's no real reason to chop off the first 10 games. All right, so there's a very natural reference point in terms of the length of a season, where we played 3 cup games in total, and then we played a 38 game league season. There's no reason to chop off the first 10 games. The only reason you would chop off the first 10 games is because the first 10 games obviously went very well, and therefore if you're using that graphic to look at things from a more pessimistic point of view, you can do that, right, by taking out the first 10 games where we were unbeaten, we were top of the league, and all of those things. Now, I will caveat that by saying that even during those first 10 games, I was delighted and I was happy, and I was, singing and chanting in the stadium after the Man U game with all of the rest of the Spurs fans in the South Stand. But it is important to say we had our fair share of luck. We got the rub of the green in those first 10 games. We came out of the blocks hot, and we caught a lot of teams out until they really seen how Tottenham are going to play and how to counteract that. That's certainly something I think happened, but there is no reason that that's not in itself valid. So it's still valid that we came out hot, we did really well, we beat lots of teams, we were very good at home, we were very exciting. That's the football that Ange wants to play, and that's hopefully what we're going to see an improvement on this season. So for me, you use the season as a whole. You got 41 games if you want to use them, 38 games. We were the 5th best team in the Premier League. That's fact. It's not subjective, it's objective. That's how it's judged at the end of the season. So they don't hand out trophies for performance, they hand out the Premier League title to Man City because they won the most points over the course of the season, and we were the 5th best team. We were short 2 points of being 4th, and there's a couple of games in there you could point to that actually we should have finished 4th, I believe, but we didn't. In the end, we didn't get over the line, therefore we didn't deserve it, and that's just the way that football works. The other caveats that I'd put, if you are going to chop it out and you're going to use those 30 odd games, is that Chelsea game was a real turning point. We all know that. The amount of things that went wrong for us in that game, Chelsea being Tottenham's kryptonite, is incredible. Injuries and then suspensions after the red card. So All of those things added up to the next few games. It's only defeats and a draw in the next kind of 4 or 5 games, all the way through to the West Ham game, which we lost. And if you remember the Aston Villa game in that time, we played really well, but we came out with a defeat. The West Ham game, we actually played very well. We were very attacking, but they scored 2, not freakish goals, but quite fortunate goals to actually win the game. And so there was a bit of an odd game up at Man City where we got a 3-3 draw. But again, I think that game's a bit of an outlier. We played well, and Tottenham traditionally is a bit of kryptonite to Man City. So we tend to do okay against them. So what I would say is the mitigation of how bad things were going is that first kind of lump of red lines that doesn't look great. You could say we had a lot of players missing. We lost Van der Ven, we lost Maddison, we lost Udogie and Romero to suspensions. We then ended up losing Basuma. The suspensions are certainly our own fault, absolutely. But if you look at it in terms of performance, which is what we're saying, we're looking for patterns and we're looking for a consistency of the way we're doing things to check where we are. I don't think we were able to put out a consistent first 11. We certainly weren't able to put out our strongest first 11 for a very long time, possibly into the new year on a consistent basis. And therefore, you would expect rocky performances and maybe results to go the same way. If you're getting the rub of the green you were getting in the first 10 games, you might get across the line. But actually, I don't think we had a great deal of luck after the Chelsea game. I think we used it all up before that in the Man U game and the comeback in the Sheffield United game and all of those things. So I don't think we got any luck after that. We then went on quite a good run, played well against Newcastle, won that game convincingly at home, beat Forest, beat Everton, and then really poor performance to Brighton, lost that game. And then we did okay. We had a kind of consistent run of fixtures with Bournemouth, a draw up at Man U, beating Brentford. The draw with Everton wasn't great, beating Brighton in a revenge manner, and then we had a defeat to Wolves. Wolves had our number. They were set up in a way to play against us, and they were the better team across 2 fixtures against us. And so if you look at it from that point of view and you continue to go down the fixtures, it's green and green and green and yellow with the odd defeat in there. It's actually not that bad. It's not terrible. But then you've got another big block of red, which we all know, and that is that nightmare run of fixtures. So even though we did start getting players back and we did have a team available to us, we can complain about those players not having had a full season and maybe not being fully fit and not having bedded into the system. All of those things are irrelevant. Every team has injuries. But we were then going to go and face the top teams, the hardest teams in the league, and we were going to do it back to back to back to back. And that, for any team, would be hard. For any team to go into that run of fixtures where you've got to play Newcastle away, then you've got Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool. There was the Burnley game, which we did win, and then Man City. So that run of kind of 5 games is a really, really difficult set of fixtures. And we certainly didn't perform well in some of those games in terms of how far behind we were. The Newcastle game was a shambles, the Liverpool game likewise, and then 3-0 to Arsenal at half time. So all of those things, the final results looked a bit more sanitary because we pulled quite a few goals back, but we'd already lost those games. So we didn't perform very well. The Man City game at home, we don't need to dig into. That was what it was in terms of how fans felt, and the split between Ange and the feeling of not wanting to hand the title to the North London rivals, who coincidentally we've got this weekend. So I think if you look at it again, those 5 fixtures, if you were to put them anywhere in the season and you were to come out of those with defeats away to Newcastle, defeat to Chelsea, as we always do, Arsenal, even at home, is very possible. Man City, you'd expect, is going to be a really challenging game. All of those games, and Liverpool, of course, where we never get a result. All of those games are games that Tottenham could lose at any point in the season, and then to have them back to back to back, you don't get any momentum because you're not getting points and you're not putting performances on there, and that compounds itself and makes it harder and harder and harder for the team. And we didn't have a squad. We didn't have the freshness. Ange didn't feel he could rotate. He didn't want to use the youngsters, didn't want to put them in the firing line. So I think that is quite logical. It's not something to lose our minds over. We were disappointed. It hurts. It's painful as fans. but I just think that we're capable of losing those games until we really improve as a club and a squad, back to kind of where we were in the good days of Pochettino. So they were eminently losable. So again, there's a bit of mitigation there. So if you look at that block of really tough games and getting what we deserved out of them, and then you look at the other big red block, which is immediately after the Chelsea game, including the Chelsea game where we lost all those players and you know, there's a lot of turmoil. Actually, it doesn't look that bad. There's not that many red lines in there. And that's why we finished 5th. Not just those first 10 games where obviously we did brilliantly and we did get a big stack of points, but we finished 5th because of that. And there's lots of things about how bad we were away from home. A lot of those games that we're talking about, those red lines, during those 2 periods are away from home. And yeah, we certainly weren't brilliant. We certainly didn't perform well. And away from home is certainly a real acid test, especially for a team that's going to play the way Tottenham play, because even away from home, you might, barring the bigger teams, you might have a lot of teams in the Premier League who are going to be quite pragmatic against you and play a brand of football that has been shown to be effective against Tottenham, and we now have to be a lot better at playing our football to nullify that, because that appears to be the way that Ange's going to do things. So for me, I think there's more nuance to it than just throwing out a bunch of statistics and saying statistics don't lie, which obviously we know to be a fallacy. And I think if you dig down into it, it wasn't as bad as that graphic when you see it on them with all the red on it makes us possibly feel. So yeah, no reason to take out the first 10 games, put those back in there, look at it as a whole, look at a couple of the mitigations. Some of those, including the suspensions, were us shooting ourselves in the foot. Look at the fact that our squad isn't or wasn't then what it is now. We've got youth on the bench, which some people are not happy about, but I do think Ange trusts them, and we are going to be better this year, bringing players off the bench and being able to play the system we want to play. And if we can now turn the screw and take our first 3 performances of the season and turn those into consistent 90+ minute performances where we do manage the difficult moments and we get across the line and we score the goals we should be scoring, actually I think we're going to see an improvement. We're going to take a step forward this season. So fingers crossed. I'm saying positive. That's just a response because I've seen this doing the rounds and everybody seems to have picked up this graphic, and I just think it's a bit more nuanced than some people are making out. It is not all doom and gloom. So that's where I'm coming at it from. There were patterns, there were things we can take out of it, and I think we're all aware of what those are in terms of our defensive frailties and what we need to do in terms of taking our chances up front. My hope is that we do this season, and let's crack on by doing it against that lot down the road on Sunday. So to those who are going to be there on Sunday, I look forward to seeing you. Let's have a great game. Let's just get a result. I'm not so fussed about the performance, although I'd like a performance. Let's make it a difficult atmosphere. So looking forward to, well, I'm not looking forward to Sunday, but yeah, it's exciting. Premier League's back, and what a game to come back for. Let's go and get it done. Come on, Tottenham.